I was thinking about how do you crystallize the choice in this election, and I've been trying to do this on the air more, and I'll do it in 30 seconds. This election is about whether you want government to be bigger. Because one thing everybody knows, they got it. Obama wants government to be bigger. Now, there's only one way you can make government bigger. That's ultimately by taking more of your paycheck. If you think that's a good idea, vote for Democrats. If you think that's a terrible idea and not the way to get back to prosperity, there is only one way to vote, and that is for the GOP.
Let me, when we came here at 100 Days of Obama, there was a guy in the audience, Dr. Hal Schurz. I don't think Hal's here tonight. Is Hal here? I didn't see him. And Hal was listening to the Obamacare thing, and he was so challenged by the conversation, he went out and started docsforpatientcare.com, a national organization boasting thousands and thousands of doctors now. He was in the room, and he said, "You're right, I have to do something." And he was a pediatric urologist, children's here in Atlanta, and he went out and he changed the debate. Now, we lost around, but he personally went on a mission. And now that's the good news. Here's the bad news. Michael and I were together the week before the 2008 vote with Tim Pawlenty in Minnesota, and we failed. We failed because Norm Coleman, one of the best men in American politics in the last 25 years, lost to 225 votes to one of the worst people in American politics in the last 25 years. Ever. And it's because we just did not communicate. If we had somehow communicated the absolute necessity of intensity over a prolonged period of... I called my nephew in Ohio in 2004. Poor young lad's gone Democrat on me, but I called him up at that time. He was 18. Called him 4 times on Election Day. 4 times. "Have you voted yet?" "No, Uncle Hugh, I'm going to go vote." "Have you voted yet?" Like on the hour. He said, "Leave me alone." I said, "Well, I will stop calling you when you go to vote." That is your job on Election Day.
First, Mr. Emerson, you spoke about jihadist proselytizing in the prison system. What can you tell us about it on the university campuses? And secondly, when Khalid Sheikh Mohammed beheaded Daniel Pearl, he did exactly what Mohammed himself did and what he commands. And we see what's happening in Africa, Indonesia, Thailand, India. How do we get around that in discussing Islam as being moderate?
First of all, on the college campuses, I just want you to know one of our favorite people, Andy McCarthy, both you've had on the show, former U.S. prosecutor, just wrote a wonderful book called The Grand Jihad, How Radical Islam and the Left Are Destroying America. And he focused a lot on campuses. And unfortunately, and tragically, there is this new generation of students who are being fed a staple of anti-American and pro-jihadist rhetoric. That's the fruit of college professors who are very left-wing, the Middle East Study Centers that are 100% anti-American and pro-radical Muslim, and student groups on campuses that are anti-American. And this terrible, mixture, this poisonous mixture, is really, unfortunately, going to have an effect in 10 years, 15 years, when these graduates become part of the American government. They become lawyers at the Justice Department. They become journalists. So we're looking at a crisis down the line that I'm afraid we're not addressing. We need to take back the universities, absolutely, and we need to make sure that professors who utter radical Islamic theology, who utter anti-American military dogma, who trash the United States, they should be reported, they should be written about. There's no freedom, there's no immunity for these people. They should be held accountable. And the universities should be told by donors that they're not going to get gifts from their graduate donors who have money unless they change the university's selection of professors and don't give tenure to professors who breed a whole new generation of anti-American activists.
The term moderate Muslim doesn't have a lot of meaning. What we really need is not moderate Muslims, we need reformist Muslims. Because what you need is a reformation of those elements of Islam that are desperately crying out for it. And that's why I'm sure a lot of the Muslims on Steve's staff and a lot of the Muslims who are active in our military, really, they may use the term moderate, but what you're really talking about is a reformist point of view. And by the way, reform is a very good word politically and linguistically, and we should embrace it.
Islam is neither radical nor moderate. Islam is a religion, it's what you make it to be. And the reality is, unfortunately, that the center of religious political gravity in the Muslim world today belongs to the Muslim Brotherhood, the radicals, the Wahhabists, the Salafists, the Deobandis, who want to impose the Sharia. And they exist in Europe, they exist in the Middle East, and they also exist in the United States. But as you point out, in the United States, they're more inclined to carry out their campaign to Islamicize America by using dawah, D-A-W-A, proselytization, the stealth jihad, and infiltration. Now, I reject the notion that you can categorize Islam or any other religion as inherently evil. Because I know Muslims, pious Muslims, like Zuhdi Jasser, and I think you guys know him. He goes to the mosque 5 times a day. He served in the U.S. military as a naval surgeon. He is genuinely a moderate that opposes political Islam. He opposes the imposition of the Sharia. He opposes Sharia as an authoritarian, anti-female, anti-women, system. So I don't want to foreclose the possibility that there can be a reformation in Islam. I don't want to foreclose the possibility that there can be personal reformations like Zuhdi Jasser has. And admittedly, they are in the minority. I agree with you 100%. And you're right that those Muslims that you speak to who are radical, they say there's no such thing as radical Islam, there's only one Islam. That's because they want us to be in the position that when we criticize radical Islam, they can call us bigots. They use Islamophobia to intimidate criticism, to silence the criticism, which I totally reject. And we have to stand up to them. And we can't accept the notion of fake moderate Muslims, which many exist. Because when you ask them, do you condemn terrorism, they say yes. And then you ask them, do you condemn Hamas and Hezbollah, they say no. And there are a lot of them. But on the other hand, there is a minority that does exist. And I think it's counterproductive to simply categorize the religion itself as inherently evil, because it's not. It's what you make it to be. Zuhdi Jasser makes it to be a reformation in Islam. And I want to encourage that. And I want to empower him and other women to do the same. And it's difficult. And let me tell you something. It's a real battle, because when you look at the history of Islam, it conquered by jihad, and you look at the notion of who controls Islam today, it's the jihadists. But that wasn't always the case. There have been times when the Turks controlled Islam and it was a moderate empire. So I do think that we're living in a certain stage right now that unfortunately shows the radical side of Islam that basically is interpreted by many people to be the entire spectrum when it really isn't. I know there are Ahmadiyans. Ahmadiyans are Muslims that are actually firebombed and murdered in Pakistan because they're not considered legitimate Muslims. And there's a mosque in Seattle that I actually speak to once a year because they identify with our politics. They are Muslims. They're not accepted as Muslims by the Muslim Brotherhood, but they are Muslims and they're genuinely moderate. And I want to encourage those types of sects to develop and prosper.